My name is Susan, and at 60 years old, I believed my life was over. Not because I was sick. Not because I was poor. But because the man I had loved for 38 years walked out the front door and never looked back. At least, that's how it felt at the time. It happened on a quiet Sunday morning. I was making coffee when my husband, Richard, sat across from me at the kitchen table. He looked nervous. I assumed he wanted to discuss retirement plans. Instead, he cleared his throat and said words I never expected to hear. "Susan, I'm leaving." I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because it seemed impossible. Leaving? After nearly 4 decades together? After raising 2 children? After building an entire life? But Richard wasn't joking. He explained that he felt trapped. That he wanted excitement. That he wanted to find himself. Then came the final blow. There was another woman. She was 32. Young enough to be our daughter. I sat frozen as he spoke. Every sentence felt like a knife. When he finished, he stood up, picked up 2 suitcases, and walked out. Just like that. My marriage was over. The weeks that followed were the darkest of my life. Friends called. My children visited. Everyone tried to help. But every room in the house reminded me of what I had lost. For months, I barely functioned. I cried myself to sleep. I replayed every memory. Every argument. Every mistake. I wondered if I could have prevented it. Then one day my daughter said something that changed everything. "Mom, stop mourning someone who chose to leave." Those words stayed with me. Slowly, I began rebuilding my life. I started small. Morning walks. Reading books. Joining a local gardening club. For the first time in decades, I focused on myself instead of everyone else. At first it felt selfish. Then it felt liberating. A year later, I took my first solo vacation. I traveled to the coast. I watched the sunrise over the ocean. And for the first time since Richard left, I felt peace. I realized something important. My life wasn't over. It was simply different. Over the next 2 years, I changed in ways I never expected. I lost weight. I made new friends. I learned photography. I even started a small online business selling handmade decorations. The woman staring back at me in the mirror looked happier than she had in years. Meanwhile, I occasionally heard updates about Richard. His new relationship wasn't as perfect as he had imagined. The glamorous lifestyle he chased came with constant drama. Arguments. Financial problems. Jealousy. Still, I didn't pay much attention. His life was no longer my concern. Then, 3 years after he left, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and nearly dropped my coffee mug. Richard stood on my porch. He looked older. Tired. Defeated. The confidence he once carried was gone. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Finally he asked, "Can we talk?" Against my better judgment, I agreed. We sat in the living room. The same room where we had celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, and Christmas mornings. Richard stared at the floor. Then he began speaking. The younger woman had left him. Most of his savings were gone. He had sold assets to maintain a lifestyle he couldn't afford. Several friendships had disappeared. And now he was alone. Completely alone. Eventually he looked at me with tears in his eyes. "Susan, I made the biggest mistake of my life." I remained silent. He continued. "I thought I wanted freedom. I thought I wanted excitement. But all I did was destroy the best thing I ever had." I listened carefully. Part of me felt sympathy. Another part remembered every sleepless night. Every tear. Every moment of humiliation. Then came the sentence I never expected. Please come back to me. I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty. Out of disbelief. 3 years earlier, would have agreed instantly. 3 years earlier, would have done anything to save our marriage. But I wasn't that woman anymore. The pain that once controlled me had disappeared. In its place stood someone stronger. Someone who had learned her worth. I looked directly into his eyes. Richard, you didn't lose me. He frowned. What do you mean? You gave me away. The room became silent. I could see the realization spreading across his face. For the first time, he truly understood. I wasn't waiting for him. I wasn't broken. I wasn't lonely. I had built a new life. And I loved it. Tears rolled down his cheeks. I still love you. I nodded. Maybe you do. Then I gently smiled. But loving someone isn't enough when you've destroyed their trust. He lowered his head. For several minutes neither of us spoke. Finally he stood up. I understand. As he reached the door, he turned around one last time. I hope you're happy. This time my answer came easily. I am. And for the first time since he left, I realized how true those words were. After he walked away, I sat quietly by the window. Surprisingly, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel revenge. I didn't even feel satisfaction. I felt gratitude. Because losing Richard had forced me to find myself. The woman he abandoned had been scared and dependent. The woman sitting by the window now was confident and free. Sometimes life falls apart for a reason. Sometimes the ending we fear becomes the beginning we need. Richard thought leaving would make him happy. Instead, it taught both of us a valuable lesson. You can replace a house. You can replace a job. You can replace possessions. But when you throw away genuine love and loyalty, there may never be a second chance. And that's exactly what Richard learned when he knocked on my door 3 years too late. The end.